Hello and welcome to New Junction and episode 2 of Diorama Diaries. Now today we're going to be focusing on the base work. As you can see with the board, since last week I've coated it in the brown undercoat. This was literally just some Woodland Scenics earth undercoat paint. It doesn't really serve a purpose other than the odd bit of scenery which will show through will show up as brown rather than the sort of plywood colour. So now that's done and dry, the next one is I'm going to be putting some paving slabs in front of this concrete base. So I've treated myself to some model railway scenery paving slabs, and they literally come as a kit that you cut out and stick down individually. The reason I've gone for this is because I want them to be stuck down individually, so they're a bit random like the real thing. And what I plan to do, literally spray those up in grey. Here's one I've done earlier. I'm going to cut those out, place them in position. And once they're dry, I'm going to cover them again with some varnish and then go over them with various weathering powders, etc. And hopefully that should come up quite nicely, but we shall see. Join me after I've laid them. And there we are. Now, because I'm basing this on an actual block of paving somewhere, I'm trying to match the various patterns. So as you can see, some are offset, etc., and bumpy. I'm trying to match the real deal. Now while this is drying, I'll be cutting off these little edges that you can see on the ends, these little wisps of card, and then I'll be going over it with the gloss or matte varnish. It doesn't really matter at this stage. All the varnish does is protect it from the next layer, which is the various colourings, etc. So they're now dry, and the next job is to have a bit of fun with the various washes I've got. Dig them out, and literally I'm just going to go over the odd paving stone just to make it a bit uneven colour-wise. Once they're done, I'm going to go back over it with some matte coat varnish, and that should seal it in very nicely. So as you can see, that's now been painted and gone over with another coat of matte coat varnish. This will just dull it down. Again, this isn't the final product, and the reason we add varnish each time is just because the next layer, if you make a mistake, you can protect it and then wipe it off with some thinners. But yeah, as you can see, that's drying now. So what I'm going to do now is do the general area cover. If I throw up a photo now, you can see from the general ground texture, it is sort of hardcore debris. I'm going to try and build this up myself. So the first thing I've got is my base to everything, which is soil from the garden. If I just focus you in, that's literally soil from the garden, then put through a sieve, and it's about the right texture for double O. I'm then going to add some of my ballast to the mix to give it that sort of hardcore look. I've also got a bigger grade of ballast which I'll add into places, but I might add that later. And then to darken it all off, I'm going to mix the two together. I'll have an experiment, put them in this Oxford die-cast tub, and have a play with various washes. Ooh, I can focus you in. I've got the dark brown and the dark green, and of course the some black to really darken it down, and that should bring it up like the photo. I feel like I'm on a bit of a cookery programme. So the base of my mix will be soil. Ooh, try not to spill all that on the floor. And then, being hardcore, I want to add probably about the same in the grey ballast. This is fine ballast. You normally see it as N-gauge. And then we're going to stir that around. So I'm going to take one of my acquired coffee stirrers, just mix that in. You don't want to mix it in too heavily because the ballast will sink below the soil, just because presumably it's heavier. But as you can see, it looks lighter on camera. But if I zoom you in, that's already given quite a nice hardcore texture. What I'm going to do, and the reason I've mixed it together like this, is I'm actually going to add a drop of black wash and see if we can't darken that down before we put it on the board. So there we go. I've mixed in various amounts of washes. I did add a bit of grey and a lot of black, I should say, to darken it off, as you can see, compared to the original colour. And then of course the brown of the soil. So I've got myself quite a nice mix. I'm literally just going to add a pinch of fresh, just to spice it up when it gets laid on the board. But otherwise, I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to start adding my PVA around the various area and then start spreading it accordingly. So we'll see how it looks after we've done. And there we are. As you can see, this is my attempt at hardcore. To be honest, it's come out quite well. It looks a bit patchy now because it's it's still wet. The hardcore itself is raised compared to the various gaps, and I've added soil into the gaps just to fill the glue. Once that dries, of course, I'll hoover it all off, and then of course you've got the top layers to go on. I was tempted to put tyre tracks in now, but I think I'll wait and sort of score them in later, or mark them with some weathering powders, etc. But on the whole, in terms of texture and colour, I think I've got it bang on. And there we go. So, since you last saw it, what I've done is I've gone over the edges and the back, and then the passageway here. I just put some PVA glue down and just covered it in the sieved soil. As you can see, the go-to base of choice for me. It looks quite good. The paving stones are now all coloured in. They do look a bit new and clean. However, when we come to the weathering phase, the dry brush phase, we'll really tone that down. It's just nice to get the colours in now and to make it look a bit more random, a bit more sporadic. With the hardcore, I think if I was doing it again, I would let the mix, as it's mixed in the plastic tub, dry before I sprinkled it on. Because it was wet, it has clumped ever so slightly and has actually settled quite tall. So I'm not sure how much of that will actually come off when it's fully dry and it comes to hoover the excess off. But no, otherwise I think it looks quite good. Of course, always remembering this is literally the first base layer after the painting, so a lot of this will disappear by the time all the scenery is added, but it makes for a good undercoat, a good start, and you can't really go wrong using real things such as the soil. So on the next episode, I think we're looking at placing the buildings a bit more permanently, and then making a start on the upper scenery, things like the boundaries, the fences, etc. And I think it'll tie in the scene much more, and we'll start to see some real progress. But as ever, thank you for watching. Hopefully it's been of interest to someone, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.